Alright, so this is going to be a quick overview of Python. When I say quick, I don't know how exactly quick's going to be, but we're going to try to make it as fast as possible and cover all the important content. So the first thing I want to cover is comments. So comments are basically things you write in your code so that way you can help keep track of what the hell's going on, right? So I'm just going to type this is a comment. Alright, you signify it's a comment by putting the little hash, and look, when you run the code, nothing comes up and compiles. It basically just ignores this line, but this is for you so that way you can see, hey, this is so say for instance we want to go into the next thing. Go ahead. We're going to get into variables. So variables are interesting because basically what it is just you're storing some type of information in memory, right? In RAM, right here, RAM. So essentially you can call your variable whatever you want. There's just some specifications on what you can call or what you can make a variable. So for instance, you can't start a variable with a number. There's a couple other rules. Just know that like you can find the rules for the variables. I'm not going to cover them here, but just know that you can create a variable and it can store data. So we're going to have a variable, and in this case I'm going to put the variable as, let's just do num. So num1 equals, let's say num1 equals 1, right? And then want to put a comment this variable holds the number 1. And I know this is very basic stuff. I don't know what you know about Python and what you don't, so we're just going to cover it all really fast. Alright, so say you have a variable and say, okay, well I have this variable and I want to do something with it. Well, what you can do is if you want to display something to the user, right, you can pull up the print function, because in Python I'm pretty sure it's a function, and you can say this is my variable value. And then hold up, it's been a while since I've done Python. And then we're gonna run. Right, so it prints. Let me just make this even more clear. Hold up. This is my variable's value, and it has 1, right? Because the value of the variable is 1. So what we did right here is we displayed to the user using the print function. This is a function, right? You may not have known that, but that's not really important right now. But just know that use print to display to the user that your variable is 1, right? Now you can have information, you can set up your own variables and you can display it all to the user you want, but that's pretty much useless. For most cases in programming, you're going to be you want to get input from the user, right? So to do this, we use the input function in Python. It's pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple, similar to just using the print, except it's a little different. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a new variable. This one's going to be called user input, right? And we're going to have equal to input, and then I'm going to put, let's see, what do I want to ask the user? Let's just do please enter your name. Now I wish I was teaching Java because that'd be a lot easier for me, but to my knowledge, when you use input, so input's another function, right? But inside of this is basically your display message. So it's almost like you're using the print function, except you're gonna take value from the user after you display your message, right? But to my knowledge, this input function stores whatever it takes from the user as a string. Don't quote me on that, but I know that it doesn't have a particular data type, and we'll get into data types later on in this video, but just know that Most of the time, this will come up as a string, and we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and put in. So okay, my name's Jake. Nice. So it puts it in. Awesome. Okay, so we have input from the user. That's great. Let's do something with that input. So we could just do something simple and be like, oh, your name is blah blah blah. But let's say, for instance, we want to. Let's say they give us some value, right? So they give us, I enter in the name Jake. Okay, awesome. That doesn't do anything. So say I want to do something if they enter in my name, right? Only if they enter in my name. So what we're going to use is a condition, or I think it's a decision structure. I think is what it'd be classified under. It's a decision structure, I want to say. So, but anyway, that's what if else statements are under. But we're going to say if name, I don't know, one user input equals Jake. Then you want to put what, a colon, print a Jake. The secret code is 115. Right, this will be important for later. Okay, so we run this. What I invalid syntax. Oh. So this is important. This is actually good that I messed up here. So when you're using the if else statement, when you want to compare two values, all right. So up here, right, user input equals input, and then the little phrase we put basically equals their input, right? Well, this isn't. This is more of an assignment. We're assigning user input to a spot memory, right? So we're not actually assigning user input to Jake here. We're actually comparing it and say, does this actually? So to use equals how you normally use equals, you put two of them. Okay. So if you're using an if else, or we'll get into it later, a while or a loop or something, then you're going to use two equal marks. That's how you compare if it actually equals. So one equal sign is an assignment operator, and two is to say whether or not something actually equals. So it's a comparative operator, I guess you could say. Anyway, so we're going to run it. It's a good thing I messed up there, because that was important for me to say. So please enter your name. So I'm going to enter in Jake. Hey Jake, the secret code is 115. Okay. So say, what if their name isn't Jake, right? Then we say else. Oh, hold up. Else print let's just say hey. Another point that kind of threw me off when I was coming back to Python just a few seconds ago. Whenever you use this print statement, I believe when you separate, so I'm like putting in another variable here, and it'll make more sense in a second. It automatically does a space. So you just want to keep that in mind. I'll show you when I get done with this. But hey, user input. Thanks for sharing your name. What'd I do? Oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay, so another important thing about Python that's different than Java. I'm probably gonna be complaining a lot about the difference between Python and Java throughout this, but bear with it. Python is space sensitive, so it uses indentation. So like, say you start an if statement instead of, all right, to help this make more sense, maybe this is just an example. Hopefully this helps. Like in Java, you'd put brackets, right? Don't worry about this. You don't need brackets, at least not yet. In Python, at least to my knowledge, I haven't gotten that far into it. I don't know the syntax like that, but you don't need brackets. Just instead of brackets, you put indentation. So if you do an if statement, you do a tab. Do an else statement, you do a tab. All right. So anything, because we're gonna get into some a little bit more complex, but if statements have their own scope. So inside of an if statement, right? This is our if statement. Everything inside of that if statement is only contained to that if statement. So if I write some code right here, you know, print this is outside the scope. Oh, what I fuck up again. Invalid syntax. Lovely. We're gonna see what that is, but hold up. What did I do wrong here? Is this alright? So that's alright. So, was it? Would I have a space there or something? That's what it was. It's weird. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Print. Okay. I see what it was. No, I guess that goes to mention the scope issue. Hold up. Sorry for the mix up. Like I said, I'm kind of a Python. I'm a little rusty on Python. This. Just put that. That works for me. Okay. Hopefully I can do a good job explaining this. So, alright, so we had the user enter in a name, so they enter in their name. If their name, right, if their name is Jake, then it prints out a message saying, hey Jake, the secret code is 115. And then also, just for the sake of consistency, I'm just going to put this up here as well. And we're going to go and do this. Jake, thanks for sharing your name. Okay. So if my name was Jake, or if you enter in Jake, then it prints out, hey Jake, probably should capitalize that. Secret code is 115, right? And then it also prints, thanks for sharing your name. Else, like anything else you enter, it's gonna be like, hey, thanks for sharing your name. Doesn't tell them the secret code. That's only if the name is Jake, right? Now, say for instance, we didn't want to just have two options. We wanted to have other parameters, right? So let's say, you know, else if another situation, right? So normally in in Java you'd write else if, but for Java, not Python. Oh my god, I'm getting my programming language mixed up. Else if is elif. Alright, elif. Yeah, it's not most conventional thing, but that's what it is. So I guess you just gotta learn it if you want to know Python. Okay, so else if, right, just imagine S and an E and a space. Use your imagination. But else if user input equals print a user. Oh, I guess we don't need to put the user input since it will always come up for that. So hey stop. Let's see. Hey you don't get to know. We just what did I do wrong? This is hey Cole, we just want to let you know that there's a secret code that you can't have. Alright, so if their name's Jake, then they can tells them the secret code. You can also, if you want, now watch this. This is cool. We're gonna get into another topic. This is what we're gonna call a constant. Constants in Python, you don't need to declare them as constants, but you can make constants, and this is, I guess, proper program formatting. If you want to make a constant, you put it in all caps. Just kind of like, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like lingo saying, hey, this is a constant. Like, if you're gonna look at someone else's code, if you see something that's in all caps, it's gonna be a constant most of the time, right? So this is a general good rule of thumb. So we're gonna say code equals 115. Right? So that code 115 is always, it's in this case, right? In this case, for what we're doing, the code's always going to stay the same. The code's always going to be 115. So you can put it in I guess in your code, in your program, as 115, and you can signify the fact that it will always be that way in 115. So, right, because this helps prevent an issue of what we call hard coding. So say for instance we referenced the secret code multiple times. Say we reference it, we had a thing of 5,000 lines and we reference it like 350 times in our program. You got to go through every single bit of your program and change every single time you reference that code or that variable, or I guess constant in this case. So what you want to do is you want to set it as a constant, and instead of hard coding it, you want to reference it. So that way, if the secret code ever changes, right, say we didn't want to do 115, say we want to do 116, right, I'll put in Jake, the code's 116. I also forgot the fact that it gives you a space automatically, like I said. See, it's 2 spaces because I put a space right there. Jake, secret code is 116. What if we were like, nah, screw it, we wanted to have the code be 21, right? The secret code is now 21, right? So constants can be useful for you if you have a set value. Say for instance a big popular one is tax rate. So we want tax, and you can put, most of the time it's tax underscore, like if you're doing constant, to separate your words you want to put an underscore, and then so tax rate equals 0.8. I don't know exactly if you have to state what type of data type, so let me do that. I don't know, we'll see. So that's a good use of a constant. Like say for instance North Carolina changes their tax rate or say food tax rate. So food tax rate is now 7 cents instead of, or 7% instead of 8%. Boom. Not that that applies to anything in our program, but we now have a food tax rate that you can change if it referenced in the program. So yeah, that's pretty much if else statements. I'm gonna do a practice program later on. I'm just kind of bringing these up so that we get you kind of acquainted with the idea of all these type of things. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this too. So now I'm gonna prompt the user to do something, right? So we're getting input from the user, and I want to get a certain type of result. I don't want all the other garbage that the user could throw at me, because you give the user the opportunity to give you something different, they're gonna do it eventually. So like say let's say I already put user input. See, this is bad. Username, changing this variable name just for it to make more sense. User, let's say user number, input, please pick a number for the food you want. I don't like how, we'll leave it here. Alright, I'm about to introduce you to another concept, and these things are called escape sequences. So you notice when I'm typing, right, I have this little display message. Well, what if for instance I want to skip down a line, right? What if I want to tab over, there's several different escape sequences, but the main two I'm just going to show you are new line. The new line sets \n, right? And \t is the tab one. So we're gonna do this, and I'll show you what the result is. Let's see, obviously number one, pizza, of course. We're also, let's see, I'll tab them over to oh no, cake. And what's the last food? Let's think of a food. Let's say fucking just because I work at a bagel shop, we'll say bagel. Right? And let's go ahead and display. I think I want a space there. Alright, so enter my name. Uh-oh. What do I do here? User input is not defined. Oh, see, I didn't change my variable name everywhere. Okay, thanks for sharing your name. Please pick a number for the food you want. Alright. So see how /n brought it down to want/n. Oh, so there's a space there. I guess that's kind of important to know. But so it's new line, right? Starts a new line /n starts a new line /t tabs it over, and then I did that 3 times for the different foods, and then boom, I'll let you pick. And I'm gonna go ahead and do this another new line just so I can enter in the values below. Right. So I said 3. Nice. have the value 3. It's awesome. So it's stored in user number, which is a variable that references a location in memory. Not sure how important that is to know for Python, but information nonetheless. Okay, so we have the user's number. So, say for instance, we only gave them 1, 2, 3, and somehow they fucked up and they decided they'd enter the number 4. Well, we have to stop them from entering stupid numbers and entering the correct numbers, so we have to put something called input validation. We're going to do this input validation using loops. You can use input validation in other ways. It doesn't just have to be loops. You can use if else statements, but generally speaking, the best way is loops, because a loop, for our purposes, will continuously ask the user to enter in the value that we want them to over and over until they finally do. So they have to enter in the correct value to continue in the program. Otherwise, they can't continue and they're just going to be stuck entering incorrect values, and that's shame on them, because you as the programmer should display to them, as long as you're doing your job, you should be telling them, hey, we need you to enter this. So if there is a miscommunication, maybe you need to look at what you're displaying to the user and make sure that it's clear to them what they need to enter. But as long as you make it clear to them, they can still enter in wrong data that can mess up how your program runs. So you want to make sure that you get correct data from them. So to do that, we're going to use a loop. For this case of input validation, we're going to use the while loop. Alright, so how this works is we put while, alright, and then we're going to take while user number is, let's say, alright, so we have the numbers 1, 2, 3, right? While user number is less than 0, right? While user number is less than 0. Alright, so I'm gonna need to explain that thing. Pretty sure these are called conditional operators. I could be wrong in the exact name. But say for instance we have a statement, right? So, or not a statement, but we have this loop and we wanna test. We wanna let me make sure I'm wording this right. It's very important that I word this correctly. Okay, so you see this variable. We're comparing it, saying, is it less than 0? Well, if you want to compare multiple things, right? So say you have multiple cases that you want to be true in order for a loop to happen, right? Or go through, we use conditional operators, right? So that would be and, or, I think not. But in this case, we're going to use and. So if, or while user number is less than 0 and user number is, what is it, less than 3 or greater than 3, then we're going to say user number. Can you also pay attention that I indented right there? User number equals input. You dipshit. You entered, oh, look at that. Maybe I'm the dipshit. Wrong value. Please. Okay, this is also I think this is also important because I think we're about to run into an error when I run this. That's a good thing. Okay, so we're about to run into an error. And also didn't have proper syntax. Alright, look. We're about to be prompted with an error, and I'll explain why. No, wait. No, it's about to be. Hold up. Alright, so 5. Yep. Okay. Trace back. Most recent callback. Not supported. Type error. Not. What's this? I guess. Was it less than or equal to? It's not supported between instances of. I guess str means string, which is a data type string, and int. Okay, so we can't compare strings with, I guess, less than or equal to, whatever. So what do? Well, we change the data type. So what I mean by data type is right now when you put in when you get input from the user, it's putting that in as a string. So I enter in 3 or 5 in this case. I enter in 5. That's gonna be a string. It's not actually a number. It's the character 5, which is, I don't know what system Python uses. I know Java uses ASCII, and like each number or each like letter in capital lowercase has like a value on the ASCII system, and then each one of those has a certain value. But anyway, each letter has a value, but we want a numerical value to store in memory. So we're going to change the data type of our input to an integer, right? So you do that by specifying that it's an int in front of, or an integer in front of your input. Now, how do you know? Oh, how do I know I want an integer? Why wouldn't I want a float? Why wouldn't I want a double? Well, float. All right. So if you want, let me just make sure something. Oh boy. Make sure doubles exist in Python. Double is not defined. Yeah, was it float? Alright, so for the sake of time, I'm just gonna say if you want to put in anything that has decimal places, you specify it to float. But see, these are solid whole numbers, right? Selections, no decimals, none. That's an integer. So we specify as an int. Remember, and then we wanted to make sure that they entered in the right value. Right, so the same thing we put up there. I don't know how case sensitive this is. We're about to see. It is case sensitive. And yeah, int is a keyword. That would probably explain why it's case sensitive. Okay. Let's make sure it prompts us. 7. See, I didn't use proper logic. You want to make sure that if you entered the wrong value, it prompts it back up, and obviously it didn't. So that meant I used proper or improper logic. So what I want to put? User number is greater than 0. doing stuff too fast. That's why I brought that up. Oh boy, let's ignore that. Okay. But as you see, it basically forced us to enter a correct value, which is what we wanted. So what I did wrong was I used and, so I made it where both those statements had to be true instead of or. So it wasn't anything wrong per se with the logic, but you want to be careful with what conditional operator you use. So like say I made it where user number is less than 0 and user number is greater than 3, which makes no sense because how is it going to be less than 0 and greater than 3 at the same time? That means this loop would never run. So if one of these two, so if this is true or this is true, the loop will run. So I'm also now realizing for some reason I deleted my statement. Interesting. Oh, sorry about that. Alright, so we have that. So also the for loop. The for loop basically uses the for loop in a similar fashion to the while loop, except for that the for loop, you use it when you know the amount of times you want to test something or iterate. Basically when you know the amount of times you want a loop to run or go through, then you use a for loop. So a very elementary way of describing this concept is, I guess, set of a variable loop number equals input, and we're gonna go ahead and specify this as an int. So input, choose the or pick the amount space to make sure you have the right amount of parentheses. Alright, so that loop number gives us the amount of times we're gonna iterate the loop, right? So we say for loop number, never mind, actually for I, we're going to use I'm going to say index. Index is sort of like where we're at. I don't know if you ever use an index in your book, but it's like it gives page numbers. It tells you where you can find stuff, right? So that's how sort of like we're going to use in here. So for index in, and we're going to say the range no. Oh, I shouldn't be yelling like this and dumb professional, but whatever. Now, this in range loop number isn't technically how always your for loop's gonna run. I would look more into it because in Java you put for, you set an index or an iteration, and then you test it, and then you do an increment, which I'll explain later. But basically it takes the index, puts it in here, and keeps running it for however many times your loop number is. It's probably not explaining the for loop to the best of my ability, so definitely brush up on the for loop, or let me know if you want a more in-depth explanation of the for loop, because I'm not doing the best job right now with the basic explanation. But anyway, I'm just going to show you what it does. So I'm just going to say print the index. Remember, I did the indentation. What's wrong with this? I want to put a colon. I guess it signifies the end of the loop. I'll come back to the while loop. Look the amount of times the loop iterates. Let's say 69 times. Okay, well this is interesting. We're gonna learn a lesson in index. Okay, so technically our index starts at 0. I don't know if that's the same in all. I don't think it's the same, but because in Java you set your index's value and then you increment, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't apply. This is Python. In Python, I'm guessing the index. So this right here, and this doesn't have to be index. You don't have to use the word index. That's another variable name. You can choose whatever you want that to be. If you just want that to be I, go have it. Index is just what I chose. Starts at 0. So say you just want to list the numbers, the number in the loop range. Well, it starts at 0, but you want to start it at 1. So what do? Plus 1. $69. Look at that. Boom, bada bing. Starts at 1. Ends at 69. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay. And then one last thing. So we did all that, right? And this weird program that does absolutely nothing, but it's a program nonetheless. There's these things called methods, and this is a little bit more complicated for Python, in my opinion, just because you're not required to do a method to run your program. In Java, they always require you at least make a main method. Python, they just allow you to run it without a main method. But you should get in the habit of making a main method. Okay, just to help you out. Well, I don't know if that's the case always. I mean, if you're just writing like pseudocode, then have at it. But write a main method. All right. So to do that, you want to use the define keyword, main, and then use the colon, signify. The end of the statement. I don't know. Sorry. I don't know Python as well as I should to me making a video on it, but hopefully my understanding of the concept will transfer over. Alright, so do that, and then you call the main method by saying main. Now watch this. This is important. It's not going to run. See if you can pause the video and come up to the reason as why this won't run. Think about it. Alright? And now you're back. Alright. We're going to run this. Expect an indent block. What? Basically what that means. So you know how we were tabbing over everything? Well, now because we added this in last second, we're going to be tabbing in everything. should run now. Alright, that's our main method. So why do we break up into methods? What's the point? That seems ludicrous. It ran fine without being in a method. Well, say for instance you wanted to write a program, but it's a big program. There's a lot of stuff in your program. So what you gotta do? You gotta break it up. Well, you gotta have people to write different. You're gonna have people write different methods. Or this is another thing I should clarify. Methods and functions are, for our sake, the same thing. I'm gonna be referencing them as methods, but they're called functions most time in Python. So like print is a function, right? It's a function inside the Python library. But for our sake, functions and methods are all the same. Say for instance we wanted to create a method, or we had someone create a method. We want to have someone create a method. We define this method as fuck bitches, make money. And just for the sake of the lols, we'll put duh. Alright, and then we decide whatever the hell we want to put inside our method. So this also comes up with another interesting concept of scope. Like I mentioned earlier, scope is sort of a thing you need, a concept you need to understand. But basically, each method has their own scope. It's different than the main method. So any variables you created in the main method, they won't be inside of your new function or method, right? So unless you create it as a global variable, but that's not really something you want to do right now. So anyway, just say print more money, more problems. And then, alright, so we have that method, but that method doesn't do anything unless we call it or reference it. So we don't put the semicolon or regular colon, and that should alright. So right here this decides to run, right? So we defined it, takes our method or function, and we have a print statement and puts it right here. I wonder if let's try some. Nah, I'm not gonna worry about that right now. I'm not gonna worry about that. Alright. So that covers a lot of the main topics. I might have missed one or two things. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna actually make something useful with all that random information I gave you. So this